Good morning, students. We are dealing with neuro-ophthalmology, and if you remember, we have finished with the anatomy of the optic nerve and physiology of the optic nerve in last lecture. Today, we are going to cover a very important topic, that is papilledema. This papilledema is sorry. Papilledema is a life-threatening condition, and the diagnosis of papilledema, timely diagnosis is of extreme importance, because if you are not able to diagnose papilledema in time, you are missing a life-threatening condition of raised intracranial pressure. Most important cause of papilledema is raised intracranial pressure. So patients will be referred to ophthalmologist primarily to rule out papilledema, because neurologist wants to rule out raised intracranial pressure. So this condition is literally life threatening, and the diagnosis of this is of extreme importance. Now let us see introduction. So what is the definition of papilledema? Papilledema is swelling of the optic nerve or optic disc head, which is secondary to raised intracranial pressure. So this is different from disc edema. I will repeat this. Papilledema is swelling of the optic nerve or disc head, which must be secondary to raised intracranial pressure. If there is edema of the disc head without raised intracranial pressure, you will not call this as papilledema. Papilledema mandatorily means raised intracranial pressure, which is transmitted to the optic nerve or disc head. Now, this papilledema, if you see the pathophysiology, it is non-inflammatory. So we will next lecture will cover optic neuritis, which mimics papilledema, but that is inflammatory edema. This is non-inflammatory, purely passive edema, non-inflammatory, and hydrostatic mechanism plays the role. As we have seen in the anatomy, the optic nerve is covered by meninges and subdural, subpial and subarachnoid spaces. Now out of the subarachnoid space which covers the optic nerve contains CSF, which is in direct continuation to the subarachnoid space which covers the brain. And when the intracranial pressure rises, that CSF comes under pressure. That pressure is transmitted hydrostatically to the optic nerve head. No inflammation has any role in the mechanism of papilledema. So this is a non-inflammatory hydrostatic swelling, which is a passive edema of the optic disc. The definition I will repeat again. If the edema is secondary to the raised intracranial pressure, then and then only it fits in the definition of papilledema. Now what is the pathogenesis? This flow chart nicely depicts the pathogenesis. So primary change is increased intracranial pressure. Now we will see subsequently what are the causes of increased intracranial pressure. Now this intracranial pressure blocks the exoplasmic flow. We have seen in the last lecture there is a exoplasmic flow which is retrograde and orthograde. So visual impulses including mitochondria, they flow. This is known as exoplasm. So this flow is orthograde when it is from optic nerve head to brain, and retrograde from brain to optic nerve head. Now when there is a hydrostatic pressure increases and CSF under pressure chokes the optic nerve head, this exoplasm gets stagnated. So next change is exoplasmic stasis. This exoplasmic stasis leads to optic disc swelling, and this optic disc swelling in also percolates in the subretinal fluid, leading to subretinal fluid accumulation. Then what other changes of increased intracranial pressure leads to? There is distension of the optic nerve sheath, which also causes choroidal folds. Next, there is a optic nerve sheath distension will also lead to venous obstruction, and this venous obstruction will lead to edema, and this will subsequently cause retinal hemorrhage, and nerve fiber layer edema and exudates. Also, optic disc swelling will lead to axon compression, hypoxia and glycosis, which subsequently lead to optic atrophy. So, end result of long-standing papilledema is optic atrophy. So, if you are asked what is the cause of blindness which can be there subsequent to papilledema, you must say it is optic atrophy. End result will be optic atrophy if the process is not halted in between. If you diagnose papilledema, find out the cause, treat the cause, papilledema may reverse if it is done in time, or whatever residual damage will remain there, and that will cause partial optic atrophy. But if the process is not halted, it will ultimately lead to total optic atrophy, which will be called as post-papillitic optic atrophy, which is also known as secondary optic atrophy. You will subsequently note there are different causes of optic atrophy: primary, secondary, consecutive. So this atrophy, which results from papilledema, is called as post-papillitic optic atrophy. So this is the pathogenesis of papilledema. Again, the pathology which is slightly in detail, edematous changes where the maximum edema occurs at the optic nerve head. So these edematous changes located at the optic nerve head in front of the lamina cribrosa. We have seen the parts of optic nerve head: superficial, prelaminar, lamina, retrolaminar. So this edema is in front of lamina cribrosa. Now what changes you see? There is engorgement of small blood vessels which become tortuous. So if you see fundoscopic changes, engorgement of blood vessels, especially veins, they are engorged, they are tortuous. Then surrounding nerve fiber layer of the retina or optic nerve head gets swollen and varicose. Numerous cystoid bodies are formed in front of the lamina cribrosa. These are pathological changes. So what they have seen in pathological changes? Numerous cystoid bodies. Electron microscopy shows axons are engorged. Optic nerve is nothing but axons of the ganglion cells. So there is engorgement of axons in the laminar portion of the optic nerve. These swollen axons, they are filled with mitochondria, which are seen anterior to lamina cribrosa. Subpial edema distal to the entry of the central vessels. Now you know optic nerve has central vessels, central retinal artery and central retinal vein. So this distal to them there is edema of the in the subpial area. Now you have already seen, now subsequently retina will involve. So there will be choroidal folds and there will be subretinal fluid. This will go towards macula, and there will be deposition of exudates in the macular area. These deposits, they form a star-like pattern. So around the macula you will get a star pattern. If 360 deposits of exudates, it is called macular fan. If part of the macula is showing radial arrangement of exudate, this will be called as macular star. So macula will show star pattern or macula will show fan-like pattern where exudates get arranged radially along the internal limiting membrane folds. Outer plexiform layer is edematous, but in that cystic spaces are absent. Now what is the etiology? Etiology of the papilledema is the etiology of the raised intracranial tension. Now what causes raised intracranial tension? So raised intracranial pressure causes include intracranial tumor, most important life-threatening condition, which is also known as ICSOL, intracranial space occupying lesion. So this is the important condition which you see with papilledema, and you must suspect and you must rule out. So you see a case of papilledema, mandatorily you are going to advise MRI brain or CT brain. MRI will be especially if any vascular lesion you are suspecting, but this raised intracranial tension you must rule out. Next is pseudotumor cerebri, but that will deal later. We'll see the life-threatening conditions. subdural or epidural hematomas, brain abscess due to high fever, meningitis, very important cause, encephalitis, and cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. So all these conditions are going to cause raised intracranial tension and going to cause papilledema. So now you have understood the causes. You must see the patient from that angle. So you have to think fast. You suspect papilledema, think fast. What you will think? Patient has neck rigidity, patient has fever, patient has altered consciousness, patient has convulsions. All these things you have to, memory loss, all CNS related problems that you have to now suspect. And neurologists or physicians will call you to rule out this. The reason being, one thing is you will indirectly tell them that there is a raised intracranial tension, so that they will try to find out from neurological point of view. Secondly, whether CSF should be done or not, they will like to know. Lumbar puncture. So if there is frank papilledema, if you advise lumbar puncture for CSF analysis, you are creating more risk to the patient, because in case of raised intracranial pressure, tapping the CSF fluid, you are inviting coning of the brainstem. Under CSF is under pressure and physician tries to do lumbar puncture, sudden decompression, there will be coning of the brainstem that will invite death. So in that case, you will have to tell the physician there is a raised intracranial pressure, we doubt because there is papilledema, but you go for other ways, MRI angio, CT scan. But if they mandatorily want CSF, you will advise them start mannitol. Reduce the CSF pressure by mannitol, and under mannitol they can do lumbar puncture if they really want to analyze the CSF for finding out the type of meningitis, tubercular, pyogenic, viral. They will need CSF, but that tapping has to be done under mannitol. That is the ophthalmologist's job, to tell to the treating physician, start mannitol, reduce the intracranial pressure, then you can do CSF tapping. Then pseudotumor cerebri is nothing but it is a benign raised intracranial tension. So there is one condition which is known as benign raised intracranial tension that will produce CSF, the papilledema. Benign raised, the other name of pseudotumor cerebri is benign raised. So there is a raised intracranial tension, but that is a benign condition. It is idiopathic. We don't find any other thing. It is a diagnosis of exclusion. So CT will be normal and MRI will be normal. Everything will be normal, but there is papilledema. So exclude other conditions. That is very important, because other conditions are life threatening. Without excluding them, if you suddenly tell it is a benign condition, you are creating a risk to the patient. So on clinical exam, papilledema, but no CNS signs, maybe except headache, CT normal, MRI normal, everything normal, exclude everything, then you can say probably this is benign raised intracranial tension. Remember this. So this is itself is a separate topic for a discussion. PGs it is important. UG I will just touch it later on. Now what are the risk factors and prognostic factors? Transient obscurations. So papilledema as such patient will not have any sign visual except transient, which was in amaurosis fugax. Visual obscuration lasting for few seconds to few minutes. Otherwise all signs will be CNS related, headache mainly. A visual central vision on Snellen's papilledema will have 6 vision. Always remember, extremely important. That is a differentiating point from papillitis. or optic neuritis. So early papillary edema, vision is unaffected. Remember this. What we discussed, optic atrophy, that is a late consequence, and in that consequence, after that, vision loss will occur. Early papilledema, patient will never complain of vision loss. Early papilledema, central vision on Snellen's will be normal. Pupil, early papilledema will always be normal. Always be normal. This is a main differentiating feature from papillitis or optic neuritis. Remember this. Only thing, if you try to plot the fields, enlargement of blind spot will be there. Enlargement of, because optic nerve head is swollen, there will be enlargement of blind spot, but otherwise vision is normal, and what else? Pupil is normal. There will not be any ocular pain. Pupil will not be affected. These are all features of neuritis, whether there is inflammation. So remember this, papilledema will not have very dramatic ophthalmic features other than clinical picture of papilledema as far as patient's complaints are concerned. Other complaints obviously will be there. Headache, mainly headache. So that we'll see later on. So clinical features, no symptoms, episodes of transient obscuration of vision, monocular or bilateral blackouts, increase with in the pressure, in the posture. So on fields there will be enlargement of blind spot or contraction of the visual fields. Relative scotoma, first green and later red. So scotoma, because of papilledema, is relative. So obviously when I say relative, there is one more term, absolute. So it is your job to find out how will you differentiate absolute field defect and relative field defect. Find out what is absolute field defect. In papilledema, it is relative field defect. It is first to green and later to red. Now headache is very characteristic if it is because of ICSOL, intracranial. You will get hundreds of causes of headache. So headache itself is a very big topic, starting from simple sinusitis, tension headache to raised intracranial lesion headache. So headache is very important clinical entity. Now headache because of raised, if you see papilledema and you suspect raised intracranial tension because of secondary to ICSOL, intracranial space occupying lesion, you will definitely like to know the pattern of headache. Now if ICSOL is causing headache and papilledema, it is very typical. It is early morning, it is associated with projectile vomiting, and it is bending forward, headache will worsen. So these are the characteristics of headache. Nausea, vomiting, obviously vomiting will be projectile if it is associated with raised intracranial. But other causes also you have to know. Meningitis, fever will be there, neck rigidity will be there, Kernig sign will be positive, altered consciousness will be there, and frontal lobe involving behavioral problems. So all these things you will. Another thing is, one particular thing I will like to introduce is pituitary adenoma. Pituitary adenoma is extremely common intracranial space occupying lesion. Pituitary adenoma takes time to produce papilledema. Many times pituitary adenoma will not produce papilledema or optic this picture. But especially young females, you have to ask history of altered menstrual history. Remember this. Patient has headache, you may not see papilledema, but females, you have to ask for altered menstrual history. That is very characteristic of pituitary adenoma. This you will come to know only by fields where pituitary tumors will typically produce bitemporal hemianopia. So half of the fields of both eyes will be affected because of pituitary. So pituitary adenoma requires high clinical suspicion. Remember, and there will not be optic disc picture immediately, but fields will give typical picture of pituitary adenoma. Diplopia, again, raised intracranial tension whenever happens, there will be sixth nerve palsy. Sixth nerve, this is pseudo localizing sign. Write it down. It is not a localizing sign. It is a pseudo localizing sign where as, as soon as raised intracranial pressure occurs, sixth nerve, because of its longest course, gets affected. That will produce lateral rectus palsy. And this lateral rectus palsy is going to produce diplopia. But remember my words, it is a pseudo localizing sign. You cannot give its importance of proper localization. You cannot localize the lesion that here is the lesion. No, it is a pseudo localizing sign. But raised intracranial tension will always have sixth nerve palsy, that is lateral rectus, which will in turn cause diplopia. Remember this. Now on fundoscopy, how you will appreciate the changes in the optic nerve head. This is also very important. Clinical signs of the optic disc edema can be divided into mechanical signs and vascular signs. Now what are mechanical signs? First important sign is elevation of the optic disc. Because now optic disc which is swollen, it will get elevated. Now in two-dimensional picture, you are doing fundoscopy, how will you appreciate the elevation of the optic disc? There is a phenomena which is known as parallax. What is this parallax? If the lesion is elevated or coming in the vitreous, focusing of the disc surface, you will have to have plus lenses of the fundoscope. Now you go to the focusing of the retina. Suppose retina is getting focused exactly by zero lenses in the fundoscope. Here surface of the disc will require more than +3 lens to properly focus. You are getting this? This is known as parallax. You will have to focus. Just seeing and focusing is different thing. You will focus the structures. Focusing means clearly seeing. To clearly see the surface of the disc, because disc has come forward, you will have to have plus lenses of the optic disc of the fundoscope. Fundoscope has lenses 0 to plus side, 0 to minus side. As compared to the retina proper, disc surface needs plus lenses to sharply focus. This is known as parallax. Now in case of papilledema, there is huge elevation. So maybe +4, +5, +6 lenses will be required to clearly focus. Papillitis, you will see in the next lecture, optic neuritis is not that much elevated. Here the elevation will be less than 3. That is a very important diagnostic feature of papilledema. Now where else parallax is needed? Of glaucomatoscopy. Exactly reverse. There is a excavation. Instead of coming forward, disc has bowed backward because of the tissue loss of glaucoma and deep cupping. There you will have to put focus minus lenses. Exactly reverse of papilledema. But parallax again is important in glaucoma in this sense that center of the cup you will be focused by minus lenses. Papilledema exactly reverse. Disc surface you will have to focus with plus. So this is a very important point. Then there will be blurring of the disc margins. So margins of the disc which are sharp, now they start getting blurred. In that there will be cup. Normally there is a central cup and you know this physiological cup. So this cup starts getting obscured because there now you have seen changes occurring in the lamina, changes occurring, exoplasmic stress is taking place, changes taking place in the axons of the optic nerve because of the hydrostatic pressure. These will be reflected on the optic disc in the way that cup will get obscured. You will not be able to demarcate cup and rim. No. Now everything will be obscured. That is again a sign of papilledema. So what we have seen, parallax, margins getting blurred, and obscuration of the cup. These are mechanical changes. Then there will be edema of the peripapillary nerve fiber. So is it restricted to disc? No. Peripapillary retina will also bear the brunt of the edema, and there will be patterns lines, folds in the retina and the choroid in the form of patterns lines, retina or choroidal folds. And we have seen here, this diagram shows the macular fan, exudates getting deposited in the fan pattern or star pattern. What are vascular signs? Hyperemia. Disc will be hyperemic. Vascular congestion, venous dilatation and tortuosity, and peripapillary hemorrhages. Exudates in the disc or peripapillary area, nerve fiber layer infarcts. So you see that picture in the presentation. You go through the presentation again. So signs of hemorrhages are diagnostic of papilledema. Hemorrhages on the disc, margins getting blurred, we have venous dilatation, and exudates at the disc or peripapillary area. Now there is one more sign which is not very specific, but you should know that. Normal disc, when you see on fundoscopy, you may elicit spontaneous venous pulsations. You will see that veins are pulsating spontaneously when you are seeing normal fundus. If normally you are not able to elicit the pulsations, you digitally give pressure on the eyeball. Then you will be able to elicit. If normally you are not able to elicit, this is a normal phenomena seen in healthy individuals when you are doing fundoscopy. Now early papilledema, these spontaneous venous pulsations get lost. Spontaneously you are not seeing. If you give digital pressure, you are normally eliciting. That elicitation also is lost in case of early papilledema. But this sign, don't give much importance to this. This is a non-specific sign. But you can mention this. What are specific signs? Disc margins blurring, vascular engorgement, hemorrhages on the disc, obscuration of the cup, parallax, and all this without any evidence of vitritis. How will you come to know there is vitritis? Inflammatory cells in the vitreous. So in case of papilledema, absolute clarity of the media, no vitritis, no cells. Those you will see in papillitis or optic neuritis. Remember this. These are again differentiating features from papillitis. Now there is a grading mild and established papilledema. Established papilledema is characterized by marked elevation of the optic nerve head with blurring of the margins, patterns, folds or striae, which is circumferential retinal folds due to edema, and vascular signs in the form of engorged tortuous venules, peripapillary splinter hemorrhage, cotton wool spots and hard exudates. These are the signs of established papilledema. Then there will be signs of chronic papilledema. Disease process continues. Papilledema has now gone into chronic stage. What it will show? Characterized by presence of more marked vascular signs and hard exudates. Disc hyperemia and hemorrhages start decreasing. Hyperemia and hemorrhages now start decreasing. Disc edema appearance is described as champagne cork. It looks like champagne cork. And the color slowly from hyperemic side changes to dirty gray and pale. You have to specifically understand the descriptions. You have to imagine dirty gray. You have to imagine champagne cork. Then you will come to know this. So now the chronic stage, color pattern is changing towards dirty gray. Even when it goes into atrophy, it will appear dirty gray. So post-papillitic optic atrophy, dirty gray. Primary optic atrophy, chalk white. These are specific color patterns you will have to remember. Atrophic papilledema, now papilledema has progressed, acute stage, chronic stage, now gone into atrophy. Because the process is not halted properly, intervention is not done, or what happens sometimes, even you do surgical intervention, you know neurosurgery, you operate a case, there will be residual brain damage. That is going to be there. So patient very rarely will see that you have removed the tumor, brain is perfectly normal. This doesn't happen. Many times relapse, recurrence of the tumor may happen, or while removing the tumor, you land up with residual brain damage. So that is going to again cause atrophic changes in the optic nerve. Remember this. So it will never, very rarely it will happen. Large pituitary adenoma. Can you imagine that you're resecting it without any cause of brain damage to the brain? Never. Some damage will happen there, that will be reflected in the optic nerve in the form of partial optic atrophy. You have halted the process, but residual damage has done. So you will have to remember this. So atrophic papilledema is secondary, gone into secondary optic atrophy. It is marked by superimposed secondary optic atrophy. Optic disc is dirty white and blurred as a result of glial reaction. So in case of, now you will understand, though atrophy has taken place, margins will remain blurred. Color will remain dirty gray. These are characteristics of secondary optic atrophy, secondary to raised intracranial tension. Papilledema grading scale is also there. Grade 1 is very early, obscuration of nasal border of the disc. Nasal border gets affected first, temporal last, and normal temporal disc margin. Grade 2 is obscuration of all disc borders, elevation of nasal border, and no major vessel obscuration. Grade 3 is moderate papilledema, obscuration of all borders, increased diameter of optic nerve head, and obscuration of segment of blood vessel as they pass the disc margin. Marked papilledema, elevation of entire nerve head, obscuration of the borders, segment of major vessel obscured on the disc. Grade 5 severe papilledema, anterior extension of the optic nerve is involved, total obscuration of vessels on the disc surface, obliteration of the cup. Now, the point which is not covered here, which when we mainly discussed ICSL, which you will have to consider, intracranial space occupying lesion. Remember this, that it is not the size of the tumor which matters as far as papilledema is concerned. It is the location of the tumor that is very important. So small tumor may produce frank papilledema, even though size of the tumor is small, because it is the mechanism of causing internal hydrocephalus by the tumor that is reflected on the papilledema, not the size of the tumor. So you will have to find out which locations of the intracranial space tumors which produce frank papilledema. This is the question. Write down, find out the locations. I will give you hint. Cerebellar tumors very likely to produce papilledema. That doesn't happen with frontal lobe tumors. So internal mechanism which involves in producing raised intracranial tension, that will produce the papilledema, not the size of the intracranial tumor. Followed? Okay. Now, as far as the clinical diagnosis of papilledema is concerned, what differential diagnosis you would like to give? Papillitis, that is optic neuritis. Name itself tells that it is inflammatory. So that entire next lecture will devote to papillitis. Second is pseudopapilledema. Many times optic nerve head mimics picture of papilledema. Best example is high hypermetropic patient. Hypermetropic discs are small. High hypermetropic, those who are suffering from high hypermetropic refractive error, their optic disc you may suspect papilledema. you will have to go with the other clinical parameters. And if your retinoscopy shows plus high, plus 5, plus 6 number, you can say probably this is a pseudo papilledema. Drusen of the optic disc. Drusen is a condition. I won't go in detail for UG. You will have to just complete the list Drusen. PGs find out what is Drusen. What is Drusen of the optic disc looks like. AION, I will not go for UG. Anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. How? What is the pathophysiology? In 2-3 lines, you show me next time what you have worked on AION. I don't expect right now in details of AION, but what is Drusen? What is AION? Optic neuritis, again papillitis, optic neuritis are same. We will discuss in next UG lecture. Tilted optic disc, UGs don't bother about this. PGs find out what is tilted, what is hypoplastic, and what is myelinated nerve fiber. Myelinated nerve fiber, last time I discussed in detail. Myelination never happens when the axons are in the retina. Ganglion cells, they are axons, nerve fiber layer. They go in the optic nerve. That is optic nerve. 1.2 million axons of the ganglion cell layer is optic nerve. Optic nerve is a fiber optic cable. It just does work of transmission of the impulse. So as far as the axons are in the retina, they are not myelinated. They enter the optic nerve, they gather the myelin sheath. Now when the retina shows myelination of the nerve fiber or nerve fibers involving optic nerve head, it will mimic papilledema. But what is the clinical importance of this myelinated? Myelinated axons, myelinated nerve fiber. Find out if you have a case where you see that there is myelination of the nerve fiber seen in the retina, document it. Do photo documentation. Demyelinating diseases, patient gets affected by demyelinating disease like multiple sclerosis. This patch of myelination will vanish. That is its clinical importance. Remember. Now, when the axons get myelin sheath in the optic nerve, normally, then this optic nerve gets affected in demyelinating disease naturally. Multiple sclerosis or Davick's disease, neuromyelitis optica, there will be occur demyelination affecting the optic. Papillitis, there are a number of features which differentiate papillitis from papilledema. This particular topic of differences between papillitis and papilledema we will discuss at the end of papillitis. So logically first understand papillitis, then we will see the differentiating features in next lecture. Pseudopapilledema, drusen of the optic disc, pseudopapilledema, hyperopic disc, tilted optic disc, hypoplastic disc, myelinated nerve fibers look like this. Myelination has taken at the level of retina. Normally it doesn't take place there. Take fundus photo. Tell patient your retina is showing this. Patient may not have any symptoms. This is a aberration happened. But he suffers from multiple sclerosis or demyelinating disease. This patch will vanish. That is its clinical importance. Now investigations, you have to be extremely vigilant in handling a case of papilledema. Ask history immediately. History of headache, convulsions, loss of memory, so many things related to CNS. Then physical examination, maybe diplopia hai kya? That is, you have to extraocular muscle movements. Then you will have to see for the all other cranial nerve exams, other nerves are involved, or neck rigidity signs, Kernicks sign, and all other signs related to meningitis. Ophthalmic exam, fundus exam, visual acuity, pupillary, motility, alignment, and visual fields. MRI with or without contrast is the investigation of choice. So your job is refer case to neurologist, and it is a neurologist who will plan the further investigations. But suppose you feel that from your side, go for MRI immediately. MRI brain. and then refer patient to neurologist. So basically this is a neurological disease manifesting in the eye. Very rarely you will have rare conditions where ophthalmic disease has produced papilledema. Those also you will come across. That also you will have to, as a PG student, find out causes of unilateral papilledema, find out causes of bilateral papilledema, find out causes related to ophthalmic disease itself. But basically start thinking from cavernous sinus thrombosis, most serious life-threatening condition, meningitis, encephalitis, intracranial space occupying lesions. These are the commonest conditions you have to first rule out, and it is always err on a side of doing extra investigations in these cases. Suspect papilledema, do MRI brain. Don't wait in these cases. Okay, so that those, and refer the case to neurologist for further, because neurological intervention, if it is a cause of neurological interventions only is going to halt the progress or stop the progress, and ophthalmologist is not going to intervene. So you have to follow the case and tell neurologist do intervention. Neurologist, if it is ICSOL, whether to take for surgery, meningitis, type of meningitis, bacterial, viral, fungal, or whatever, and intervention accordingly is going to halt the progress of papilledema. So you will refer the case telling that we suspect papilledema, grade, chronicity, etc., and follow the case and ask them to send for regular follow-up. Because as I have told you, the process may be halted, but residual damage might have done. That residual damage will definitely produce some optic nerve problem. So you will go for field subsequent visits to know what damage is residual. And if it is still progressing, you will tell the neurologist that the process is still continuing. You have to halt the process. So all depends on the type of lesion. In this context, take the syndrome which is known as Foster-Kennedy syndrome. So CT scan rule out intracranial obstructive hydrocephalus, subarachnoid epidural subdural hemorrhages, acute infarction, cerebral edema, where MRI is contraindicated. All these things you will have to find out. Lumbar puncture is diagnostic, but frank papilledema, if you advise lumbar puncture, coning is the problem. Remember this, coning can cause sudden death, herniation of the brainstem, sudden decompression you are doing from the lower side. So your job is to warn physician that be cautious. If you want to analyze CSF, do lumbar puncture after reducing the ICT by giving IV mannitol. So you will be going in the ward, you will be writing the things. So I am giving you hint right now. So if you feel that it is papilledema, your recommendation will be neurologist, refer to neurologist for further management. If your colleagues press that we want to do LP, you tell under mannitol. Under mannitol. Give a mannitol is a short acting drug. IV push 100 cc, 150 cc. It will have immediate effect on the eyes. It is a short acting. So it will reduce IOP and intracranial ocular pressure both in a short tenure. So it will have a short effect. Within that they will have to do lumbar puncture. Fundus fluorescent picture, find out the optic papilledema, how it looks on the fundus FFA. Pseudotumor cerebri is again, you will have to know the benign resistant intracranial tension. It is related to steroids. Though it is idiopathic, you will have to find out the cause. Obese females may be on OCPs and taking hypervitaminosis A, consuming steroid for a long time. These are some predisposing conditions for benign raised intracranial tension. There is no neurological other features. Patient may have headache, but there is papilledema. no other features of neurological disease. That will by eliminating other conditions, you will be specifically labeling pseudo. Again, there is one test for that. Repeated lumbar punctures or measure the CSF pressure while doing lumbar puncture will give clue of benign rest. So CSF is under pressure. That will tell you that probably this is benign rest. No other viral, bacterial, fungal load, no other CSF problems of inflammatory cells, and no other CNS features. But diagnostic lumbar puncture, you can advise to confirm benign rest intracranial tension. Your CSF tap, you measure the pressure of CSF. If it is higher side without other CNS involvement, probably you will be confirming the diagnosis of benign rest intracranial tension. So repeated LPs are also advised as a therapeutic measure. Controlled lumbar puncture repeatedly you do, that is maybe the treatment of benign rest. But you read about this in detail. I won't advise this for UGs that may be beyond their syllabus. So treatment is underlying cause. Find out the cause, start the treatment. That is the treatment of papilledema. Timely intervention has a remarkable effect on prognosis. Vision recovery is faster than subsidence of fundus features. So vision recovery, if it is chronic papilledema, otherwise vision is not affected. But if intervention is done, patient may regain the vision whatever he has lost, or further deterioration of the vision will be prevented. Brain tumor, craniotomy to remove the tumor. Resolution of papilledema occurs within 6 to 8 weeks. Pseudotumor cerebri I already talked. In this connection, before concluding my lecture, take down the clinical entity of Foster Kennedy syndrome. Foster Kennedy syndrome, and even UGs, I will like to know the answer from you. Find out what is Foster Kennedy syndrome. In subsequent lectures, we will discuss this entity in details. Okay, thank you. उसको बोलो ते फक्त मला हे मला